Get started now. Before we, hand it off to Alban to talk a little bit where we are in OCI certification research and all that stuff, let's do a little intro to some folks. Not many folks know each other, so let's start on this side and pass the mic around.
Hey, I'm Doug Davis from IBM.
Mike Brown from IBM. I work on Container D, CRI, and a whole bunch of OCI specs and runc, whatever.
I'm Stephen Day, and whatever OCI, Container D, Moby, registry, that kind of stuff. So, any questions you can ask me, kind of.
Hi, I'm Steve Wally. I work for Microsoft.
I'm Iago, and a colleague of Alban. I worked a lot on Rocket back in the day, and yeah, I'm interested in OCI.
My name is Arun Gupta. I work for Amazon, and I work on whatever I like to work. Well, these days, it happens to be containers and serverless and open source.
My name is Dongsu. I work at Kinvolk with Alban and Iago.
I'm Chris Hodge from the OpenStack Foundation, and I work on our interoperability program and also run our strategic containers work.
I'm Ann Bertuccio, also from the OpenStack Foundation, mostly with Kata containers.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Valstein, also known as the Jester on GitHub, and I work for Docker and on just about any repository that's there.
I'm Akihiro Suda from NTT. I'm a maintainer of Moby and Moby Build Kit and Container D. And for OCI, I'm recently working on rootless containers. Yes.
Terje Sandum. I work for the Norwegian Welfare Administration.
Silvana Cirujano. I work for Siemens, and we're interested on containers for edge devices.
I'm Hiro Kamezawa, working for Fujitsu, leading container and Kubernetes stuff.
Hi, I'm Tsukazu Shibata, working for NEC. I'm really interested in OCI.
I'm Wong Gosling from China, Alibaba. Okay.
I'm Alan Sun from Alibaba in China. I'm responsible for Alibaba's container runtime punch container. We are doing some OCI things. Okay.
Fabio Raposelli, work for VMware. Working in cloud native since like 2014. I've been interested in everything that has to do with containers, and right now Container D and OCI.
A late comer. Introduce yourself.
Bit of surprise coming late, yeah. So I'm Stefan from SUSE. I'm responsible for maintenance coordination, so also delivering container nowadays. So yeah, interesting around everything around that.
Yeah, people that are late, he could wait. So before we have Alban kind of give us an update on OCI certification, so what happened initially when we started OCI was our initial goals of getting 1.0 out the door happened, and then we took a few steps back and kind of delayed our work on certification work. So now that 1.0 is out the door, we also recently added the distribution spec, which should help with kind of how certification is done on the image front. It's kind of time to revisit these efforts. So we, from the OCI trademark board and kind of staff, have decided to contract some work to kind of a third party to kind of just give a holistic look on how things are. And so the folks at Kinvolk have been kind of going around, poking around. I'm sure you saw some issues and pull requests from them to kind of take a step back and look like how we're actually going to do this and give some advice. So they're going to dive in a little bit on kind of the research, and then it would be kind of good to hear from the room of what their thoughts are and how we kind of move forward on this. And then it looks like there's also some like kind of, I guess, container end users in the room that are just interested in just general questions. We'll allow you to ask them as it makes sense. Yes, Stephen. Yes. No, it's not done. A distribution spec project. Yes. Yeah, it's approved. The project is created. Yes, yes. Thank you for the semantics. Yeah. All right. All right, go ahead. So, Alban.
Thank you. So I created some slides to support the discussion as well. Can everybody hear me fine? Good. Okay, so I am Alban, I'm Kinvolk, and with Nongsu recently we work on the test in the OCI certification program. So this is the plan of my slides. We'll start with showing the different repositories that exist for this. There are different repositories for the spec, both for the runtime and the image, and since really recently in the distribution. And for the runtime and the image, there is additional repositories which contain tests to check whether implementation follow the spec. So I think most of the work so far in the test has been on the runtime tool repository. So that's just to show a quick view of the progress in the last month. So it's a snapshot, screenshot of the GitHub page. It showed on the spec some modification on the runtime tools as well. And on the image side, well, nothing in the last month that was done previously. And in image test, no change either. On the distribution, that's really recent, so that's the initial work either. Okay, so those I'll repeat for the microphone. Okay. So there is really 2 commits. It's not representative of the work because this commits taken over. Okay, so that's commits taken over from the previous repository. On distribution tools, that doesn't exist. One day. So now we'll talk about OCI runtime. So there is one repository which contains the spec, so that's mostly text files with a spec description. On the spec itself doesn't mandate any way. It doesn't mandate any CLI flags or gRPC interface or anything like that. It defines different actions with parameters, but it doesn't mandate any CLI. So in order to be able to run tests, the tests need to have a way to execute the runtime. So in the repository of the test, there is additional CLI spec that explain how it will execute the test. So this CLI spec in the test repository is actually the how runc does it. So when we run the test, we can specify which runtime we want to test. In this case, we want to test runc, and we can either run other tests or execute one specific test that we want to try. I gave a try to integrate that in CI with Travis. So I did a pull request on runc to execute the tests. I did the same in crun, so that that pull request was merged but then removed. But yeah, you can have a look at that. For bubble wrap OCI, which is a wrapper around bubble wrap. At the moment, I cannot run any test because it doesn't support right now the 2 action create and start containers. So I cannot run tests. This is a kind of summary that I've written a while ago about tests on runc. So some of the, whenever the tests give a failure, it could be either because a bug in runc that it doesn't follow the spec. So there is a couple of issue files for that. These tests are run it on Travis, so it could be a limitation of the Travis CI platform. For example, it doesn't allow any C group modification for block. Or it could be bugs in the certification test. Some of them are fixed, but there are still some bugs in the test. On other things that I have not checked yet whether it's a bug in the test or in runc or something else. Questions? Oh, yes, so one of them is about the delete. I think there's a discrepancy between the spec and the implementation. I don't remember the exact details about this one. And the other one is about setting the mount propagation on the rootfs. I think some options don't work on runc. I think if I remember correctly, it used to work, but maybe it's a regression. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, I put the links to the issues. It's a good question. I think it's runc. It's on a pull request for adding tests with integration with OCI. Okay. So this is on runc. I gave it a try on different runtime implementation. So runc, as I said, there is a couple of issues filed about a couple of issues. crun, there was a minor issues about the command line parameter, which is now fixed. So now it can run the test. Bubble wrap OCI, I cannot run the test because it doesn't support the two steps create and start that are specified in the spec. Wildcard, it's runtime implementation in Rust by Oracle. None of the tests pass because there is an issue with seccomp at the moment that it doesn't implement or it crashes on the seccomp configuration. I mentioned spawn OCI, that's not something that, sorry? Okay. Spawn OCI, that's not a project that exists yet, but so systemd and spawn can start containers, and there is some interest to make it more aligned to the OCI spec. So when it exists, we can try it. And then Docker or containerd or CRO, that's more high-level container runtime, so it doesn't directly expose the OCI bundle interface. Oh, it does in containerd.
Sorry for interrupting. You're doing a great talk. Apologies for interrupting. So containerd actually exposes the runtime spec directly, so you can inspect it and then actually inspect the on-disk bundle through the runtime. So, but the issue we have with certification is if we certify on the command line interface, which actually isn't a standard, then we're unable to certify things like cryo and Docker and containerd. So that's where the main issue with certification was historically.
Okay. So for containerd, we can check that. Okay. On the status on Rocket, so there is no support at the moment, neither for the OCI runtime or the image spec. There is a few issues feel about that on GitHub. One about supporting the OCI runtime and supporting the OCI image spec. And another issue, which is about using runc internally. So Rocket has a different stage system. There is stage 0 and stage 1. Stage 1 can be implemented with systemd and spawn or can be implemented with KVM or LKVM. And there is some work to use runc directly instead. But as far as following the implementation in OCI runtime on image, there is quite a lot of work to do, so don't expect. Do you mean what's missing in what different? Do you have idea of different implementations that
So Kata container is an OCI runtime, and Google just announced a new one, which is called runc, not runc. So you probably want to add those to your list.
So this slide is to talk about the scope of the OCI runtime certification. What do we want to certify? Yeah, for low-level runtime like runc, that's the easiest part. And for Docker and Containerd, so you said there is a way to run the OCI bundle with Containerd. I need to look at that. But otherwise, on this issue, there was different ideas talked about different ways to do that, like exposing the OCI interface, or there was talk about, I think Christy mentioned, if we use runc unmodified, then we can consider that the higher level runtime is certified, or run test with mock runc, and see whether it's called the OCI bundle interface correctly. So far in not work, we are focused only on the runc-like runtime, and I think we'll continue on that to finish the test. But yeah, if you have discussion.
So on the last slide, you separated Rocket from Docker and Containerd and Cryo. Why doesn't Rocket fall into the high-level runtime space? Where is it not using runc internally? Is that why? Is that why you've separated them? Well, on the next slide, you have the same.
Oh, okay.
So because Docker, Containerd, Rocket, Cryo, you all consider high-level runtime.
Okay. Okay. So you said Docker, Containerd, Cryo, high level, and the rest more low level. Yeah. Yes. It's not at the moment. Yes. So there was no specific reason for the layout.
We've been calling runc a runtime engine now, and Containerd a container runtime, like Docker. But yeah, so instead of higher level, lower level, runc is a runtime engine, a container runtime. Has one.
It also has.
So as far as work on the test, I think we continue on the test for the container runtime engines, and the rest is open to our discussion, I guess.
So when we had the certification working group initially formed and tasked with coming up with the scope for the program, the initial idea is a lot of us thought, what do end users want to see, right? They want to see if they use I don't know, ECR or any other registries out there, or any of the things that run containers. They want to see like here's an OCI certified solution, right? That guarantee that this will work and is portable, blah blah. So that's was the original idea. Agreed. And what are you getting at in terms of here?
So if that's the intent, is as a customer, I want to buy or use an OCI certified runtime. If I step up to GKE or AKS, do I want to see that brand on those services? Because if the answer to that is yes, then the testing infrastructure that will support a certification program would need to support somehow running that test environment to demonstrate, just if we can, if the only thing that we can run the testing harness against is the reference implementation, well, that better work. I mean, they've done good work and demonstrated that, yes, the spec and the reference implementation are drifting. Okay, we knew that would happen sooner or later. But if I say, okay, we've got runc, so how do I demonstrate in AKS, using Microsoft as an example, that I'm using that runc that was certified? And I'm going to tell you right now that if my customers are demanding a high quality solution and I have to change runc after it's been certified, I will do the right thing for my customer. So that's why I'm trying to say, where is the reality for me as a vendor providing a product that will have a runc that's certified, a runtime that is certified? How do I use that to solve that problem for the customer who wants to? So that's the problem I'm trying to bridge.
So having run one of these programs for several years now, if you don't give end users a way to verify for themselves, it is likely that you will have vendors who don't comply, and so it's critical. Whatever, I mean, just from my personal experience, it's critical to make sure that you can test, if not 100%, as much of the specification as you can from user space. So to be able to show up, drop a container into a system and test as many capabilities as you can, and not assume that you have to have privileged access to check everything. Because ultimately that's just what you want from your specification is to guarantee behavior for the runtime and the user, right? For the end user. I mean, that's just I've run one of these for years, well, that's just
No, you're just passing it. Yeah, so I think going off those requirements, if you take number 3 and turn that into like a proxy, where you can say, all right, run this thing and then call into this runtime, and then it basically passes everything through and checks the results, and it works, and then combine it with number 4. That would work with every like high-level runtime, like Docker and Containerd would work with that, and Cryo would be able to work with that out of the box. And so basically like modify the suggestion number 3 to be like a proxy command line runc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what little playing, and I haven't touched the test suite for 18 months now, but what little playing I did at the time, there's 2 levels. There's the way that a lot of the test suite was structured was you build a container full of the test cases, and that allows you to test an enormous amount, and that would be something you could hand off to AKS or anything else. The small piece of the runtime that you run into where you can't easily test it that way goes back to the idea that Stephen was talking about a moment ago. Because there's not a command line interface, I can't test the actual life cycle on a higher level construct. But if that's the only thing that's missing, we've still come a long way in being able to say, here is a container, a collection of containers full of tests that will prove that whatever the thing is that's running those containers meets, can be certified. That at least solves for 80-90% of the problem, and then we need to be creative on that last piece.
On line 2, where it says certify they use an unmodified version of runc and sign an agreement that they do, in practice that never works.
Sorry, I didn't hear number 2. Does it work or does it not work? Okay.
If I'm understanding number 2 well, the problem with it is, well, if I'm going to build the right thing out of this open source project into my product, I will make changes, and so I will not verify that it was those bits that I downloaded. So those bits are irrelevant to me, except because I might have to fix a bug, and even if I contribute that bug fix back, it may get modified in getting remerged, and so the bits are never the same. They never will be, and you can never keep up. So trying to force that level onto the certification program or the tooling will be wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, so everybody's going to ship their own security patches, and nobody will run an unmodified version of runc at some point. I mean, maybe. I mean, for the most part.
Next slide is just view of what changed on the repository in the last 2 months. So it shows contributors and number of files changed, and there are a few pull requests in progress, so it doesn't show everything. And then I have maybe 4 slides about different kind of change that happened. There was a refactoring in TAP. So TAP is test anywhere framework or protocol, and it showed the result of each test in a specific format that is described below the slide. It just print OK or not OK if the test succeed or fail. So there was a number of fixes about that. There was some general fixes. A good part of the test run specific binary in the container, and this check if everything is fine according to the JSON config JSON. And some other tests test more the lifecycle. But most of the tests, I think, are in the first category, where it just executes a binary in the container and check that is in the correct environment. So there was some fix about that, about the base file system that exists in that container environment for the test. There was some tests about read-write or read-only that were fixed. Some tests about propagation months, on other tests, seccomp, etc. There was some improvement about checking to run the test on the correct platform. Basically, there was some if platform is Linux or Solaris or Windows, do different things. There was some test updates on air limits, on tests related to user namespace, a fix on read-only, read-write, and some new tests added about capabilities, about the process user, whether it's run in the correct UID, etc. Test about hooks, test about when changing the config.json after the container has been started, it doesn't actually change the container as the spec require, and test about delete and annotations. That's all for my slide about the OCI runtime. And I have a similar question slide about the scope of the OCI Image certification. So this is the issues. So basically, what are we certifying? Do we want to certify specific images or specific OCI runtime that read the image correctly, or certify registries or image builder? Does anyone have any comment about that?
So I've been pushing in this discussion for a long time now that while we want to certify runtimes, we want to simply validate images. I don't believe you want to mislead customers by certifying images, because the implication of a certified image is that it's going to run on a certified runtime. And while that sounds great, I can tell you as an ISV, I'm not going to promise that I run on Joe's runtime just because it was certified. I'm only going to promise my customers that I run on things that I have tested. So it doesn't provide the promise that folks think it provides. I absolutely want to know, though, that as an ISV, the container that I've built to distribute my app is a valid container and should run on everybody's. Sorry, thank you, a valid image. Thank you.
Does certification imply a trademark application to it? Is that, yeah? So I mean, images, so many images out there. The certification for that would be a nightmare.
Kind of thinking from a technical perspective, I agree with Mr. Wally. You can't really certify that an image is going to run, on a certain place. You can certify, or just you can validate it. So like focus on validation, and then but separate. We need to separate the behavior of the registry from like the kind of abstract notion of certifying the components of an image, right? So, validating the components of the image. And I think the problem with image tools thus far is they focused around validating the image layout, and not focused on the abstract validation of the components as referenced by the like image digests. Does that make sense? So like if you say I have image with this digest and then you pull that out and you get a manifest list, you should then validate that manifest list, and then you should walk down and grab each image for each platform or each that's in that manifest list, and then validate that those components are supported. And then also to help with transition, we should probably also like grandfather in the Docker media types into that validation as well. I mean, and they are part of the specification, just so that people don't need to rebuild everything to get valid OCI images in that validation.
Thanks. Okay, perfect. 3 minutes more.
I agree with the validation for images, but then for the distribution spec, you could certify that. So each registry could basically run, here's a bunch of API tests, and yeah. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Any other questions or comments in the room? And I know there's some end users that had just like random maybe questions around containers, given that you have the folks in the room. No? Okay. Kami-san?
So this certification activity has been delayed for a year or more. We just planned at the first time. So what everyone thinks when should be this when we can start real certification program in OCI? I'm not sure. Maybe distribution spec problem and other such runtime problem and validation with spec problem. But I think we should have some target.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to commit to a date. Like, I think we've made some progress in terms of what work needs to be done, at least on the runtime and distribution side. Like, the distribution spec hasn't shipped, a 1.0, so like we can't certify something that is not finished. So on the runtime bit, that has a lot more progress, so we could probably do something there. But like, it's impossible to commit to timelines. So. I would love something by the end of this year, but that's I'm not going to hold anyone to a specific date. But for me, I have enough feedback that I'm going to go work with the Kinvolk folks and see if we can make a little bit more progress. So I got some ideas, especially from the runtime side. Cool. Right, I think we're done. So let's close it up. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Alban.
Thanks.